What is up, Star Wars Unlimited fans? It's Loopy at Late Night Gaming, and I'm here for a masterclass on Blue Boba and Blueba. And I'm here with repeat masterclass teacher, George the Hulk Hudson. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good.
And
Thanks
then
for having me.
Jeremiah Sinatra Austin. You've been on this deck for a while.
Yeah. It's good. I was talking to George about it a while ago, and we've been touching base for a while about it as well. So.
All right. So both of you have won store championships with Blueba.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So
and also me and Frank of the Sabine Blunt Sabine Masterclass split a 1K a couple weeks ago, and it was my birthday though, so I'm calling that one. So.
Yeah, we'll give that one to the birthday boy. That's fair enough.
Thanks.
And where did you play yours, Sin?
Rockin', it's. Oh, go ahead. Who were you talking to?
I was saying mine was from Orlando. So both of them are in Orlando with a lot of the players from the 5K were in those tournaments as well. So.
Yeah, it sounds like he had probably a more tough lineup. Mine was Rockin'. It's a LGS in Ohio. Yeah, there's not too much to say. Took it down.
All right, so tell me about how you found the deck. I mean, what brought you to Blue Boba in the first place?
Yeah, I'll take this. So, after Blue Vader and the success we found in Kissimmee, we predicted higher skill level players are going to drop. Green Boba's representation was going to go down. A lot of aggro decks are going to fill in the void, and a lot of people trying out these more control heavy styles, which is the perfect spot for Blue Boba to step in. The consistent answer of Boba Flip to give you percentage points versus aggro decks, and adding in yellow instead of red allowed you to do a lot crazier stuff in those control mill games where you're bringing back vigilance, and we'll go over that later, but it adds a whole nother dimension that's extremely very, very powerful, and just the ability to untap resources and play more stuff. It's a little bit of a deck building puzzle. We'll talk about different pieces later on, but I think where we landed feels really good.
All right, well,
yeah, kind of, yeah. To touch base on it, it's very similar. I saw the results of the Red Blue Vader. I've always been like, I love control decks or combo decks, so like seeing the Red Blue Vader, it's something I tried initially but couldn't find the right way to build it. And then seeing what George put together, and then Guy taking that to tournament, I was like, man, that's really fun. So I started playing it, and I was really big on Thrawn for a while. So I'd already been diving into yellow blue, but we all know the issues with Thrawn.
Time limits.
Yes, time limits is his biggest weakness. And then everybody knows Boba's strong. Having more resources, being able to do more actions. His stats as a leader is insane. So it brought you percentage points against these aggro decks and everything because you had a stronger turn 5. That mid-game turn where you needed to have those power turns, he enabled. And then you pair him with the power Blue has, it just made sense. And it was already semi-comfortable for me because I was already in that. And then I saw, I messaged George about it, and I saw, another list, and I'll give a shout out to Top 8 Gamer who did take down a tournament with Blue Boba as well, on a very much different list. We'll talk about that later, but it feels really good, man. The deck, it almost feels like I'm playing chess. That's how it feels for me.
Well, they're playing checkers. Yeah. Boba is. We determined that the design philosophy at FFG for any Boba related card is to make a fun, fair, balanced card, and then you subtract a cost and add a health. So that seems to be, about how it goes. So I don't. I mean, you want
with all his cards.
Yeah. You want a leader that makes an impact. Because
he made an impact.
All right, so let's talk about the decks. All right, this is your aptly list: all brakes, no gas.
Yes,
Sinatra. Yes. So tell me about in broad strokes what this deck is trying to do. Complete aggro, right?
yeah, complete aggro. That's exactly it. I mean, it's a control deck. It's a hard control deck. It's along the same lines as the Red Blue Vader is, in terms of what its game plan is. This just has a bit more power into the mid game, and it's not hinging on all these super valuable plays. Like, we have talked about it before, but Vader has very, very powerful plays and probably more value overall. But where he has the value in that end, you have a lot more control, especially in the mid, with playing Boba. So it's controlling this board and then finding where your game plan is. You have things like fire spray to be a bit more aggressive, and you've got these added units like Greedo. It's dropping these down, and then being able to push damage is another reason why Vader was better than Krennic and Iden, like Red Iden when they came out, because their game plan was strictly mill, and trying not to die. This deck does the same thing, but allows you to push damage and push your advantage.
All right, George, your list is a couple of cards off. Tell us about.
So I think the fundamental math of the deck and why I'm playing Boba in general and not like a yellow Iden or like a yellow Krennic or something. And what blue gives you access to is things like Power of the Dark Side or some sort of removal into a 1 cost. And with 6 of them, you have like a 70% chance of finding one of them by your turn 2. And that play pattern of, I can claim initiative, remove something, and develop something, that's extremely potent in the aggro matchups. Or even for the value game plan, where you're going remove something and then play Mining Guild TIE Fighter. Then the following turn, you follow it up with another 3-cost removal to draw a card as Mining Guild. So that the core thesis of the deck and why I wanted to play Boba was 3-cost removal, 1-cost effect, 3-cost removal, 2-cost effect. And that leads to just this extremely, like, almost untouchable first 3 turns of the game. Then you transition into, the normal Boba stuff. Boss flips, Fett Fire Spray, all that sort of fun stuff. So, basically it has its tempo where you're going for that big flip turn with Fire Spray. You still have your Superlaser Blast into Avenger in-game value strategy, and you also have the mill game plan, which is accentuated even more with Bounty Hunter Grove, Spark, and such. So, does a really good job of doing all 3 of those.
Yep, I agree with that.
All right, and how many of your matchups were won by mill as opposed to just damage? Both of you.
It's matchup related. So during the 1K, it was about 3. During the store showdown, it was 1. It's
that were won by mill or that were won by damage?
Yes. Or by mill.
Okay.
So it's your blue Iden I faced, your mirror matches, your red Vaders. I faced 2 red. Blue Vaders. I faced 2 blue Vaders. Those I've gotten with enough. So with the mill sequences, you're basically looking to do restock, search your feelings, shuffle your deck. Using Bounty Hunter Crew to get your search your feelings back into your hand, and use as many vigilance as possible. I basically got down to the point where I can mill someone about 20 minutes with this deck, which is not at all possible with like Blue Vader or even Blue Iden.
And it's very difficult for those matchups to mill you, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, because I had a Blue Iden player, and they were like, yeah, this feels unwinnable, because like, yes, they can play vigilance early, they have the same cards, but I'm waylaying my own Bounty Hunter crews. I'm playing that to get the extra vigilance faster. Like, it's just, yellow gives you so much in the toolbox without actually sacrificing other matchups. Like, Waylay is a good card in other matchups. Bounty Hunter Crews is a good card in other matchups. That's one of the kind of subtle powers of the deck, is like, you have all these very modal cards depending on the matchup, and you definitely mill them faster.
Yeah, and it's. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you the same question. How many of your matchups end up going to mill as opposed to damage?
For that, 2 of them went to mill. A lot of times, it'll get close to being mill, but at that point, I'm just so far ahead that I get to push the damage and close out the game. It's if they're not able to deal with fire sprays into Avengers, So like I'm able to push the damage. But I will say there was a lot of games that got close to mill. They'd be down to 10 cards, 7 cards. Where only like 2 of the matches were actually won by mill damage. There was a match where it went down to mill and they actually hit. They hit my restock and I didn't have any more bounty hunter crews. That was like a really long match, but where it was is they didn't have any vigilances or left anything in their hand. And I had the vigilance, so I was able to heal the damage. That was a game I almost lost for a round. It was very, very close. So I ended up like it was 24 to 30 is where it ended. So that one was a long, mentally draining game. But yeah, it's very hard. If even the mono blue items and these other control decks, even if they're running the out of aspect bounty hunter crews, the out of aspect sparks, they're paying so much more for their pieces to work than we are. I get bounty hunter crew for 6, and even if you're playing them, you're paying 8 for it, or you're paying 6 for Spark of Rebellion. I'm only paying 4. I'm able to be way more fluid with my resource usage and able to do so much more that these decks that have to play double out of aspect to get the power that we have. And that's another really big difference between Boba and being in cunning versus not.
Speaking of the man, Boba Fett, why don't you run the viewer through? We don't need to read the card for this series, but
you've heard this one before?
Yeah. What plays are you setting up with his resource ability? I mean, on the flip term specifically.
Oh, man, you want to start, George? We'll talk about.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, the classic Boba Green. You come with Bosk, ambush something, get that trigger, attack a Boba, get a 3 cost now. I think that's one of the more straightforward ones, but I think especially with the blue removal suite, you have an absurd consistency of just getting that first trigger. It's not like we have to hold on to Waylay or hold on to some removal card. Half of our deck's removal. We're fine. We're gonna get the Boba trigger on that turn. So another common one could be like takedown into a 2 cost into another 2 cost. Like any combination of 8 resources is extremely powerful. I even personally like the Mining Guild TIE Fighter, right? You do 4 costs into a No Good to Me Dead into a draw card of Mining Guild TIE Fighter. Like there's lots of really powerful lines on the flip turn. I entrenched my own Boba a surprising number of times. Like it's just the correct play. Whether it's take out another enemy leader or just to assert ground dominance when I already have, a Fett's Fire Spray in the chamber, like, yeah, it's
Boba offers some like inherent anti-aggro protection. I think because of when he comes out and what he hits for in his health.
For sure, like, Avenger, even like Vader was basically a dead card versus aggro, so like, you just lean on Vader himself, which is extremely powerful, but with Boba, yeah, coming out earlier, giving extra resources. Like, I think just having Bosk and Boba protecting them is oftentimes enough. Fett's Fire Spray is kind of like gravy. As long as you're protecting those 2, the value you generate from Bosk is crazy. I had a game just today where I entrenched the Bosk, and just his on event playability dealt 10 damage. Just they couldn't get through the events, and Bosk was just firing away at everything. You don't get that in like green Boba or yellow.
Right.
Yeah, no, just to touch on some things there. Yeah, the access you have into these, it's, as he was saying, it's the same as like Boba Green, where you have your power term, but being able to like power the dark side into getting the resource back, flipping Boba, attacking something, then playing Bosk, or vice versa. Like you have flexibility in what you're doing there, even if it's using. There was a turn where I double takedown. Like I take down, got the resource, flip Boba, killed a unit, take down another one. Like those swings right there are like, that's a 3-unit leader while I'm developing a body. Even being able to like Bosk into getting your resources and being able to play like a Greedo and a Mining Guild TIE Fighter. Like there's plenty of avenues you can take with the deck. And one we'll talk about later when we hit the card. That just make it feel really good and makes it very powerful, like your standard Boba turns.
And I think this, like, with Boba having all those resources, it's kind of an inherent like puzzle with control because you want to have cards in your hand and more options. And Boba encourages you to like play more cards and play more aggressively and tempo out. And that was a fundamental puzzle, the question in the deck. And like I remember Pirated Starfighter was a discussion for a while, and all the synergies with that. We went off that, but
yeah, I was on that. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, I know we talked and played around with that quite a bit. But, yeah.
All right. So vigilance is a core card in the deck. Are you using all of the functions of it at times through the tournament?
I know I am. Obviously, there's the normal ones: mill 6, heal 5, defeat a unit. There's a lot of times where I'll shield a boss, I'll shield an Avenger, I'll shield my Boba. Like you just have to know in the situation where you need those effects. And sometimes it's like I could defeat something that's 3 attack, or I could shield my Boba so it doesn't die and heal 5. So it's very, very flexible, and you need to know what the situation calls for and not just think of it as like, all right, I'm going to kill a unit and heal 5. Sometimes it's okay to heal 5. You might take damage, but you need to set yourself up for the following turns. You can't like, it's very flexible, and you just need to think a bit ahead where you're going to be.
Yeah, this deck has a lot of value engines. The longer boss stays on the field, the better he makes every single event you play. The longer Boba Fett stays on the field, the more resources you're getting to draw cards or do whatever you want to do. So the field is just in playtesting. It comes up not as much as you might think it was, but it's still it's absolutely prevalent. It's absolutely there. I'll say more often times the reason it's not so much that the field is not good, it's that I have other stuff I want to play in the matchups where that might be more relevant. But yeah, milling is huge. Game winning is the shield is important. Yeah, still a great card even this deck. There you go.
All right, both of you ran entrenched.
I mean, what's there to say about it? It's a 2-cost removal, like in a sense. I have felt that. I'll say this: it's felt awkward at times, just with innately how Boba feels. Like you're might going to be delaying your Boba flip turn. Like if you're playing this on ground units, it's going to be difficult if you don't have the right things and they're developing more bodies. Like you can't really play like your boss into the ground. Like sure you're removing like running into it, but sometimes it gets very awkward. But it's just the 2-cost removal that locks down and it buys you time to get to one of your 30 events that are in the deck. You know, it gives you what you need.
I think it's a lot less clean than it was in Vader. In Vader, it was basically a vanquish. In this one, there are definitely lines where you're like, oh, I'm really space heavy this game. I'm going to play my mining guilds, and I'm going to focus on my Fett's fire spray and keeping that alive, and I'm just going to ignore the ground. That's possible. But in general, you're going to have some ground and some space. So it's not really a great time to entrench your opponent's units. On the flip side of that, or there's an actual cost in this deck of entrenching your opponent's units. On the flip side of that, I think the pro of entrenching your own units is even higher. I think entrenching a mining guild TIE fighter has come up way more than I thought it would. Entrenching boss.
It's like nuts and gum together at last.
So it for 2 resources, and it still has the option of like relentless. If they play a relentless, you can just throw entrenched on it and then wait that out and then deal with that. So great card, super flexible, very modal. Just not the same function as Vader's. It's not your 3 more copies of Vanquish. It is like in that deck.
Yeah, it definitely plays different. And I will say, getting a Mining Guild TIE Fighter down and slapping an entrenched on it. Like I had a game earlier I was playing, and I was against the Sabine, and he went Mining Guild, he went ground. I put an entrenched on my Mining Guild, and literally he didn't play space for the entire game. there's nothing they can play up there. It's so strong playing it. It's like in that matchup, I don't necessarily need to be drawing cards. Like it's good. I just need to not die. And you put that on air and you lock down one arena. I have plenty of stuff that deals with your ground. Like between boss, between bounty hunter crew, between Boba, between the removal. And now I've locked up air and not have to worry about anything up there. It's incredible. So.
All right, Super Laser Blast. Are you playing this in most games?
Yeah, I am.
So it depends, right? It's very good, but there's a little bit of anti-synergy with Fett's Fire Spray, where you Fett's Fire Spray, you don't really want to Super Laser Blast your own Fett's Fire Spray. But on that, and the caveat of that is, oftentimes it's better to play for Super Laser Blast than it is for Fett's Fire Spray. Obviously, matchup dependent, but the lines where you're going for Super Laser Blast into Avenger or Super Laser Blast into more units, dealing with bronze 4 and your bronze leader, are oftentimes more powerful than just trying to kill them with Fire Spray. The deck's better at playing the long game than most decks, so play the long game.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing, and we were talking about it earlier, where it's the more and more I play the deck, the more and more it's and the way the meta is, it's getting harder and harder to get that value and to play Fire Spray. That I am hinging a lot more on Super Laser Blast just with the way the games are being played right now. Like obviously against aggro, it's a little too late. Like sometimes for Super Laser Blast, where like Fire Spray is going to be decent, but it's the harder it gets to play Fire Spray, the better it gets to play Super Laser Blast.
All right, Spark of Rebellion was in both of your decks. I think George had 3 copies and you had 2.
I had 2 on the board. On the sideboard.
Yeah. So, still good for 4, so, I take it?
Absolutely. So, one of the thorns in the side of this archetype has been Relentless. And in Vader and previous iterations, we've kind of like, we'll throw a dummy event at it. What I found is Spark is just such a clean answer. Wait till they're on 7 resources, Spark their Relentless, and now you just continue on with your game plan. You're not throwing 2 cards at it, you're not down card advantage. It's also really good versus like Reinforcement Walker, and obvious elephant in the room, it's good in the mill matchup. If you can, restock, get the restock out of their hand, they try and mill their deck, get the restock out of their deck, you stop the restock loop. It's an important element of that, but it just has so much utility in every matchup. Just seeing what your opponent has for 4 resources. Like sometimes I'll be like, Boba Flip, take down Boba Flip into Spark of the Rebellion, take your Fire Spray away. There's just 4 resources, absolutely worth it. Defines the match a lot of times with not only hand knowledge but hand manipulation. Very good.
Yeah, I think it's a necessity in the deck as well. For the mirror or any hard control, you really do need Spark of the Rebellion. And as he was saying, Relentless is a very big problem for any hard control deck. And not only that, it's decent versus like mid-range decks like Han Green. I don't know how many times I Spark Rebellion a Han unit or a U-Wing reinforcement and completely shatter their turn 7. And like if you can shatter a Han either by not letting them get there or exhausting, no good to me dead, killing Han, whatever it is. But if I can just rip that out, like okay, deploy your Han. Like, what are you gonna do? Like I'm going to kill it. You have no good drop to play now. So it has a lot of use, and I think it's actually a necessity in the deck.
All right, Avenger, strong card in the deck.
So you'll see. I had the hot take here. I went down to 1 main board, 2 sideboard. Like the basic premise of this deck was to be a better position versus aggro. I wanted to play hard control, but I wanted to be in a good position versus aggro as well. Went down to 1, and because main board, I can always search your feelings for it. Like search your feelings for Superlaser Blast or Avenger during those mid-range games. It's very possible. You get resource advantage because you're Boba. Like you're untapping your resources. You can usually afford to find search your feelings to find your adventure. And in a lot of matches, you don't need more than one, at least pre-board. That's been my finding. So I've been very comfortable with one in the main board. I totally understand too. It's an amazing card.
Yeah, that's kind of where it varied, and I think that really comes down to where you're playing the deck at. You know, if you're playing in your local, obviously knowing your local meta, knowing whatever area you're going into. Like for me, I knew I was going into like more of these green control decks, like Devastators and things like that, where Avenger is my answer. It's like, because you often don't have it or Relentless. I'm being able to Avenger or Relentless. Those things are very important, and that's why I had two. It's also why I still run Vanquish. You know, I talked to George about it. Initially, I was on 3 in the deck. I went down to 2. I took them out, and then I put 1 back in. It's very, very good to get off of Search Your Feelings, and as it's a removal when you need it, and it's a hard removal. Sometimes that's what you need, but you can always also reoccur with Bounty Hunter Crew. So for me, like having that as a 1-up is fine. It's something that I can either get, grab, or reoccur.
And they spoiled a non-conditional unit removal today, which
I
think should be barred from George the Hulk. Just
yes, I can't wait for
on a ban list. You know, do not give that guy any more villain blue cards. All right, let's talk about I'm Your Father. I mean, people still think it's trash, George. How do you respond?
All right, let's go.
This is card complete trash.
So, especially in Boba. So, yeah, one of the core conflicts of this.
You said that about Vader.
What?
You said that about Vader.
Yeah. It's just a good card in every deck. I'm just gonna do this every single time and be like, oh man, this is especially good in this new deck. Anyway,
play it in Hero.
Exactly. That's next. So on that flip turn, they have their leader out. I Am Your Fathering. The card draw is so potent in Boba because you're so card hungry in Boba. There'll be cards with like Mining Guild Tie or whatever. Well, I'll draw for a ton of cards in the game, and I'll still go through them all because you're readying your resources, you're playing stuff, you're playing threats, whatever it might be. So while in Vader you were trying to find really powerful cards and it gave you an element of consistency, like in Boba Blue, you're getting cards and then you're playing those cards very quickly. And of course, 7 damage to me is basically a Vanquish, which is I think it's been cut 1 I'm Your Father for a Vanquish. And,
not yet. I was thinking about it.
haven't done excellent. Well done.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that it costs 3 in a lot of matchups, like if you're in general, you want to I'm Your Father in the mid game when you can immediately have a removal. Like if you I'm Your Father and they decide to let you draw, you have a No Good to Me Dead that follows it up. Fantastic. But in this deck, even being a 3 cost and against certain matchups, just throw I Am Your Father on turn 2. It gives you another consistent way to ready that resource, play a Greedo. Ready a resource, play a Mining Guild Tie. Like adding to that element of the deck, like it's just such a role filler. Yeah, 3-0 for sure. I think our initial drafts didn't have it, but it went in and it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to touch on. So, as I was playing it, and this is before I met George, before like we were playing it all, and like I had messaged him regarding the list, and then we started talking about Blue Boba and just like the shift of control. And the one thing I told him, I was like, because we talked about I Am Your Father, and I said, if there's a deck that I Am Your Father belongs in, it's Boba. And the main reason for it is like, think about on Boba's flip turn. So I Am Your Father. You say yes, cool, I'm going to get all 3 of my resources back that turn. You say no, cool, I'm going to draw. I'm still going to flip my Boba, probably kill whatever it is anyways, and still have 4 resources, or 3 resources to use something else. So like, because of how Boba works, I think I Am Your Father is just amplified in Boba.
So did anybody at the tournament actually give you like a hardcore Luke Skywalker? No!
Yeah, so I do have a guy who, anytime the card is played, he does it every single time, and he was there. So it's always fun. But the amount of times that people just let you draw, and I'm like, okay, flip over, kill your unit, and I'll power the dark side, or I'll waylay, or I'll no good to me dead, and then I just kill everything next turn. It's so good in Boba, which is why I still have to. I don't know if I can cut it just for how good it is when it's there.
And on the flip side of that, all of my locals know to never let me draw. Like I've trained them all. I've trained them with enough blue-black control. Like if they let me draw, it's only going to get worse for them. And pretty much I never get to draw with it, and it still feels good. So that's on the flip side.
All right, search your feelings. Both you guys are running it. Isn't this an overpriced tutor? Never should see play.
It's overpriced in terms of it's the only one we have in the game. It's a touch like we talked about it before. The biggest thing is it's like not always about having every single answer. It's about having the right answer. And the biggest thing that people overlook with this card too is the fact that it's the only card, and George said it even earlier, it's the only card in the game that lets you shuffle your deck. So putting things like restock, and you're like restocking whatever it may be, more removal, your vigilances, your bounty hunter crews, whatever it is, and then shuffling your deck, like searching after for whatever it is you need, just immediately amplifies that your draws are going to be better every single time. It's very, very big, and I think a lot of people overlook that side of it, the shuffle side of it itself.
Mm-hmm. You thought 3 to power dark side is bad. How about 7 power dark side?
Even more with bounty hunter crew.
Exactly.
Just keeps coming back. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we can't skip Mining Guild TIE Fighter.
Oh no.
All right.
Best card in the deck.
Let's heap praise upon the Mining Guild TIE Fighter.
So the thing about Mining Guild TIE Fighters, nobody wants to deal with it, and it's not easy to deal with. Like, it's a 1/2, so like you look at it and you're like, oh, I'll deal with it later. You don't want to waste an action on it if you're like, you don't want to waste your damage on it. But the amount of time this card draws me 3-4 cards a game, just because. And especially in Boba Blue, it uses it extremely well because you're using a removal spell, and then Boba basically gives you half of a card because you're just running a resource. Right. And it gives you that not only the consistency of finding the right answers you want, but also now it's to just constantly get value. I think during my finals match, I had a particularly valiant Mining Guild TIE Fighter. So it was because Reflex, and I had a Mighty Guild TIE Fighter into Greedo opener. And that Mighty Guild TIE Fighter lasted the entire game and drew me 6 cards. To put that in perspective, I ended that game with like 4 cards in hand. So it let me play an entire extra hand worth of cards just for Mighty Guild TIE Fighter. Incredible.
It's so good. George touched on it earlier where in Boba, you need more cards. You're constantly playing so many cards in this deck that it doesn't matter if you're drawing 2 cards a turn. You're using 5 cards a turn. Like you're using every single card you draw, you're trying to use in Boba, and that's how you're able to stay so far ahead. You're just constantly churning out cards. Well, you can't do that if you don't have cards to play. So you need to be able to have some way to have draw, to have more cards in your hand. I am your father. That's another reason why. Mining Guild TIE Fighter, on average, is going to draw you 2 to 3 cards a match. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes they kill it right away and you don't. That's mostly against a mid-range deck or whatever, where you can still deal with it. If they kill it, oh well. But again, I talked about earlier, like Mining Guild TIE Fighter, and then I drop an entrenched on it and I let it sit. Anything they play, usually it's going to kill. And then that time I get to draw. But if not, it just sits there.
Menacingly guarding the mining assets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not taking any of the coal.
I think you talked about Spark Rebellion. All right, Bounty Hunter crew. How does this affect Blue Boba? I mean, this is a reason to play the deck, right?
It's definitely one of them.
Yeah. So I think the core one, Well, I mean, there's so many lines, but I think the speed. What really made my mill game insane was firing off Search Your Feelings, finding the one of restock early. Now you bounty hunter crew bring back your Search Your Feelings from your graveyard. Now you have the restock into Search Your Feelings, all from just finding a single Search Your Feelings, and it just snowballs from there. Also, there's the obvious bounty hunter crew into just like a power of the dark side or whatever. I think bounty hunter crew is the reason I like resourcing up to 11 or 12. The amount of times you do bounty hunter crew into vigilance or bounty hunter crew into I'm Your Father into another card or whatever it might be. Like,
are you ever restocking these back into the deck from your discard?
Yes, for sure. That's actually a huge part of it. Yeah, because when you're in a late game situation where you're sparking each other, bounty hunter becomes another copy of whatever you need it to be. It's not just another copy of restock. It's not just another copy of vigilance. It can be any of those, which is huge.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing that he said, and it's also goes back to that. It's not about having all the answers. It's about having the right answer. Bounty hunter crew lets you get your chances are you have something in your discard as an event that is going to be the right answer. You have X amount of events. You're going to have something that you need, and just it's good against the mirror. It's good against any hard control deck. Being able to constantly reoccur the sparks, the vigilances, your restock if it gets milled. It's a safety net. If something bad happens, you have this. So it's basically an extra, however many you're running. I have 2 in my deck, 3 in your deck. It's an extra 3 copies of whatever you want it to be. That's able to reoccur anything that you want it to be. It's fantastic. It's very, very good.
And I think one of the big synergies with the bounty hunter crew looping your spark of rebellion. So you spark their big thing. Now they're like, oh, what do? I'll only play my small thing that I didn't really have the resources for. Well, guess what? Now your bounty hunter crew can get the value straight on that.
Right.
In a deck that's very hungry for value plays, this is one of the best. 5 Superlaser blasts in some matchups because you're bringing that back. Like, it's so flexible, and it's just. I also think the synergy with Greedo is really interesting. Like, it gives you freedom to be like, oh, well, I'm just gonna discard a card. You're always discarding with Greedo, but like now you discard a card and you can bring it back even if it's a card you wanted in the matchup. For example, restock. Great card.
All right, this one's not revealed yet. But, as a cautionary tale, I mean, so you guys seen the client reveal?
Oh yeah.
So how's aggro gonna win in set 2?
If I have something to say about it, I'm kidding now. Love the aggro players, but so it's a really good card. I don't know.
In my testing, it's insane. I mean, that's all I can say. The client it's a 3-cost 2/5 shielded. So right there alone, even if that's what it was, vanilla, that's good.
Yeah, I think he's probably related to Boba Fett.
Yeah, he's in the family.
Exactly.
I can see it in his eyes.
But in a deck, any deck that has hard removal, like I'll eat damage. So in my testing, I'll play whatever, and I'll be eating damage, and that's fine because I'm setting up. And it's like I play the client, and then they, attack me for whatever. Next turn, client, put on a bounty, take down, whatever it is. And then not only that, sometimes you just run into their 2 healthy unit. Like it doesn't, you don't have to use his bounty effect, but being able to just constantly slam down bounties to heal. So basically, in a way, it has Sentinel. Because like you have to kill it. You can't just let it sit there if you're an aggro deck. Like,
and just for funsies, he's an Imperial and Official too, both are which are relevant to other decks than this.
Exactly.
I'm having a hard time thinking any blue-black will not be running this. I mean, it seems
I think it
seems like Inferno 4.
Blue, you run the client. It's even if you're not a control deck, being able to have heal 5 on a stick with a not downside really, it's good.
I think there's a little bit of nuance in the fact that, like, yes, you are giving up effectively that first action, right? If you have initiative, you're decentivized from using the action to remove something. So in like Vader or even in this deck, you very much want to have initiative, so that way you can remove their biggest threat. Well, guess what? You're playing Blue Boba, you remove their biggest threat, ready your resources, they play the next threat, you client it, and then you remove that too.
Mhm.
Like, yeah. Obviously, we'll have to see what leaders come out, but yeah, client is just all the numbers in that card are absurd.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much for me an auto include in any blue villainy. Card's good.
All right, last card.
Probably busted.
I've noticed neither of you ran Change of Heart. Have you considered running this in your decks?
I'm too traumatized. I can't.
My initial version I did. So the initial version, it was kind of a mix between, what George was working on, what Top 8 was working on, what I was working on. And Change of Heart is good. Initially, I had it as a 1-up. I toolboxed the deck a bit more because Bounty Hunter Crew and Search Your Feelings. So it allowed me to have different answers and different tools. But it was just never needed. Like, there's times where I could pull it out, sure, and it'd kill.
Maybe this is the Palp tech you need. I'll send you the art for the special version.
Excellent. Yeah.
Oh,
No, to me, it was never really in the running. I think just for this effect, like, I think this is largely like this card is at its best when it's winning you the game, or at least giving you such a huge tempo swing you're about to win the game like the turn afterwards.
Yep.
And it never. Yeah, this is not how the deck is trying to play, really. So.
all right.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I played it for like 5 games, either resourced it or just never had it. And I was like, there was no point in me running it as even a 1-up.
I just wanted to use the art. All right, so
The work of art.
it is. I mean, really, it's beautiful.
Picasso over there, man.
We try. We actually have, if you notice the image here, we have a blue Boba and a blue fire spray in a swamp because, I mean, that's the only way to choose your colors as to which one has a swamp available.
Yes, Chef's kiss. Beautiful.
Okay, so let's talk about matchups. Deck is good in aggro.
Yeah, it feels very good in aggro.
So, did you have what's your game plan with Sabine? Say Sabine Green. I think there's 2 significant variants of Sabine.
Agreed.
Yeah, so in general, you just because you're untapping resources and playing stuff, like in your Boba flip turn is just pretty much always live versus them. There's more nuance to it, but like I feel like most of the green Sabines have been. Yeah, it's just been a matter of if you can line up 3-cost removal into something, 3-cost removal into something, like your win rate is just really high, and that's a lot higher chance of doing that than drawing Charleston. Like Charleston's great, but like your chance of the power dark side and the waylay into whatever is just a lot higher. So it's a lot more consistent.
Yeah, and like you said, you have that power 5 turn. So being able to combat them right on their turn or the turn after that they're doing other things. And again, you have the freedom of, like I said earlier, Mining Guild TIE Fighter, putting in a trenched on it, lock down a complete lane, and I just worry about ground. I'll go ground against an aggro deck. I have Bosk, I have Bounty Hunter Crew, I have Boba, I have removal. Like aggro feels very, very comfortable.
All right. What about yellow Sabine? How does that change the game plan?
Definitely harder. They have access to Spark of Rebellion, which can be difficult. They have Falcon, which anybody knows Falcon is very good against control. It's definitely a lot harder than Green Sabine. It still feels okay, but they can do some explosive things where you're like, crap, So it's definitely more difficult, at least in what I face.
I think it's interesting because one of the strengths of Yellow Sabine is the 4 health units, right? The Ezras, the Rogue Operatives, the whatever. Boba answers those. Bosk answers those. Like the four breakpoint is not
Bounty Hunter crew
that
answers
much
a lot of those.
Bounty Hunter crew, exactly. Like, yeah, Bounty Hunter crew bring back vigilance, can be backbreaking. Devotion, the sideboard. Like, I will say pre-boarded, you do have a lot of dead cards into both, like all the aggro matchups, but like post-board, you get all of the Search Your Feelings and Avengers and restocks out of there and put it up with a bunch of healing. It feels good.
And that's what the devotions in the board are for.
Yeah, they're for aggro. I think one of the drafts I was on for the while had Cartel Spacer in it, with the basic concept of I go, 2-cost based unit into Devotion, because Inferno, putting Devotion on Inferno 4, Green Sabines are just totally cold for that, and I was like, oh, if I have a Cartel Spacer, I can do that more consistently. But in testing, what I ended up finding was like Devotion on Boba Fett Leader or Fire Spray still feels great.
Why not a Mining Guild type?
Well, that makes it a target, though. That's the thing. So you're like buffing up your you want the Mining Guild tie under the radar. You want it just annoying enough.
He just wants to be guarding the Mining Guild.
Exactly.
Keep the coal.
You don't want to. Yes. Keep the coal. Don't raise any alarms. Don't get any attention. Just draw 6 cards.
And watch out for space whales. Watch out for space whales.
Yeah, Mining Guild TIE Fighters is silent but deadly. That's what that card is.
It's like crop dust in the field.
Crop dust in the field.
All right. So what about Boba Green? I mean, did you run into that?
Yeah. I played 2 on my not the 1K, the other one, the Showdown. It's your Avenger Superlaser Blast formula. They oftentimes don't have the advantage to Avenger. Some of them have adapted with Confiscates and Sparkle Rebellions. It's
with George's picture on the Confiscate, probably.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's a little thick.
I don't want to be playing this card, but I have to.
Yeah. Well, I get that comment a lot. Yeah, true. But it's a classic formula. You're gonna outvalue them over a long enough time. Bounty Hunter crews are gonna outvalue them. Their units are gonna get power dark sided. Yeah.
Do you waylay the super laser techs?
In general, I like that play line, but like it has to have a decent follow up. Like, it's not something I'm aiming to do. It's not like I'm not mulliganing. I'll phrase it this way: I'm not mulliganing for a waylay to do that. But if it happens, cool. That's all I'll phrase that.
Yeah, I'm on the same way. Like, if that lines up, cool. It's not something I'm going out of my way to do. Like, if they get to ramp, we have so much removal in the deck that. Now, sometimes, obviously, when Boba Green has like a really good hand, sometimes it gets scary. Like, they curve out right.
I'd imagine when it wins, it's because it hyper ramps.
Yeah,
just faster before you can deal, and it gets under the super laser blast, or at least mostly under the super laser blast, and finishes with the Vader or something like that.
And that important part of this matchup is, I didn't mention, like, you don't have to play a lot of the units. Like, you can just deny them their Boba untaps, like, a lot. Like, you don't have to play your Greedos out early. You don't have to play your Mining Guild ties out early. Like, they don't get extra resources while you do. But swings it right back in your view.
All right, what about Boba Yellow? I mean, I think that's getting as much play.
That's even
maybe
more.
Close.
That's a freer matchup than Boba Green.
Mm-hmm. It's real good. I there are lines they can take, like if they can get Bodhi Rook into Cunning and then strip all your answers for Boba Leader unit, and the Boba Leader unit gets out of hand. Like, it can go south, but like it basically it's a bit situation where everything has to go right for them, everything has to go wrong for you for that to materialize, in my experience.
Yeah, I would much rather face double yellow Boba than yellow green, like Boba Green. A lot of things you have in this deck too they don't want to return. If you want to return my boss, I have another ambush. You want to return my bounty hunters, I have another ambush. My fire spray, my Avenger. Like, they're not really returning anything that's hurting me. And only if they get into like sparks and their boaties and they're doing this hand shred while developing their board is when it gets scary. But that just doesn't happen often enough because you're not playing units really for them to get this constant tempo and this occurrence of their cards that they don't get to do that game plan.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great point. I mean, the bounce is actually not great against your deck because everything has a pretty good on play.
Yeah, so it's like bounce any of my ambushes back.
And waylay my mining guild fighter, but he's just coming right back down. All right, what about hero mid-range? I mean, did you have Han Green?
I did have Han Green, and it was just very similar to the list that Hippo ran that won the TTI. He had regional governors in there, and I will say it was like very scary because not only was it like that, he had it. He was a good pilot for the deck. Initially, I 2-0'd, and I think he didn't change. I don't know if he just didn't know how to play against Boba Blue, but like he didn't play it how I would think he would play it. So it felt really comfortable. And then I faced him in the top 4. And he changed his gameplay. And like game 1, he just shredded me. Like it was really, really rough. And I was like,
aggressive with ramp.
Yeah, it's just it's aggressive with ramp. He changed the way like he resourced. Like it felt like he figured it out. But then the next 2 games went back to like how it was. So maybe he just had a really good starting hand and it lined up for him, and maybe that's what it was. But Han Green is definitely scary. Han Green into any control is good. I mean, that's why Han Green is what it is. It's good into a wide field, and it's very good against control.
Yeah, I think it's one of the softest parts. This deck is soft to that matchup. Like I think, Han Green or even I want to put Blue Loop, I guess, in this category.
You mean Green?
And Green Loop. Thank you.
Blue Green Loop.
Blue Green Loop. Yeah. Because they're playing extremely powerful value games. They're gonna get more out of their cards, more out of their units. They're gonna draw more cards, whether it's Obi-Wan, whether it's Yoda, whatever, whether it's U-Wing reinforcement, home 1, they're going to replay their cards. And when half of your cards are 1 for 1 from removal, that's real bad for you. That's your math is on your favor. There are approaches to the matchup. I guess I'll throw Palpatine in this here too. Like Palpatine ends up being a mill matchup. I know that surprises some people, but in general, just because of the flip and how powerful that is, like you don't want to give them threats. So you just turn that to a mill matchup. Luke kind of turns into the same thing. So
yeah, I think Luke. I watched a Luke versus Bluba matchup at one of my locals that went way longer than what the time limit would have been.
Yeah,
I mean, by the time they were done with that best of 3,
it's gonna be grinder. Like they're constantly throwing stuff out there. You answer it, but you don't quite have enough cards in your hand to do it optimally. So and there's also this game of chicken with like your Superlaser Blast, where they're like, oh, let's say you buy 100 crew Superlaser Blast, and you're wanting to play it, but you can't because if you do, then they can actually form the board because they probably have a bunch of cards in their hand. It's a tricky one. I think Han being having no good to me dead and entrenched as a way to stop like the resupply into Han, into flip, into the whole thing. Like the fact that you have so many answers to stop that is nice. But yeah, we definitely sacrifice the value department against those decks, which they take advantage of.
All right. What about villain blue-green control? I mean, did you play Iden's, Krennic's, Phelps?
Yeah. I think if you can spark, if you spark their Relentless, you can spark their Reinforcement Walkers. Which is you're consistently going to do because of their late game plays. It feels pretty good. I think if resourcing happens, if they're applying so much pressure. Here's the thing part about this matchup, and the way this matchup plays out is, I've given this recommendation. to green-blue players. You don't play units early. You're just letting me untap and do more stuff. Start around that turn 5 and turn 6. Like, go for ramp, obviously, early, but then start vomiting stuff. When I want to be playing vigilance and I want to be bounty hunter crewing and, search your feelings and milling you, like, if you're making me respond to 2 things a turn, I'm not vigilancing you, which is then setting you up for relentless, yada, yada, yada. So it's a good matchup. I think Millennium's very valuable. You mill them very fast, but they definitely have a lot of play to just outvalue you.
Yeah, I mean, to go with what he said, I didn't face any green-blue. The premise still will stand. Anything with green, with villainy, but like green-yellow Palpatine I faced. The greedier and more value you stuff into those decks, the harder it is for me to win. Like the Palpatine deck I played against, it was my loss for the day. He was running 3 Devastators, 2 Relentless, 3 Sneak Attacks, a Mahdi, and it's just for a late game combo. Palpatine with Mahdi and a Sneak Attack on a Devastator is 20 damage.
Get devastated twice. Did he give you a shirt that said "I got devastated"?
No, but I know he should make one because it was so hard to deal with. But like, Palpatine's already very tough. He comes out at 8. He steal, like, it's tough. And when you're stuffing that much greed into that deck, it's very hard for these hard control decks to win. Because like, I want to go mill against you, fine. He's like, I'm going to slam relentless after relentless into devastators, into like, there's just not enough answers. Like, especially that we've cut back on some vanquishes, that we've cut down on this top end to be able to be in this, to make sure we're solidified in our percentages against mid-range and against aggro. That we have to sacrifice top end. You have to sacrifice value to get there. So if you're playing in green villainy, be a bit more greedy too. Like, don't play the units early, vomit out on that turn 5, turn 6, and then play greed. I mean, that's how you're gonna win.
I can tell you that my Vader game plan, Vader green, against any deck like this is just to ramp as fast as possible and land a force surrender, hopefully before you get to your blast. And then
force surrender.
I mean, if you run 3 force surrender, 3 force throws, it's really hard for control to ever get it back. From
force
there.
surrender is crushing, man. Like, no matter what deck, whether it be red yellow Han, whether it be red blue Charut, whether it be red green Vader, or red whatever, force surrender, if you get that off, and then you get another 1 or 2 discard effects, and putting it constantly, especially in Boba, as like where you want cards, now where I'm just constantly sitting at top decking, it's very hard.
Yeah, I've since the Avenger Vader video, I've played actually the Avenger Vader matchup as Turret plenty, and actually I think that if you're running the version that has 3 force surrenders, 3 force throws, and 3 K2s, that's actually a pretty tough matchup for Vader.
Oh god, it feels terrible.
I mean, you can say what you want, but I mean, Turret's usually going to be able to land the force surrender, and then from there you got to like top that perfectly to have a chance.
Yeah, it's real tough
because he's got good value and good end game. Okay, what about the hard control decks? I mean, did you run against villain double blue or villain blue red?
Yeah. During my 1K run, I ran into those were good mill matches. It was double blue, and I ran into a blue yellow, and I mean, even during my store showdown, I'm in a very blue black heavy area, so a lot of people it's very popular down here. So against hard control, it is just a mill matchup. You mill them faster. Against Vader, they're kind of sitting duck. Against Blue Iden, they're that deck list that Sawse made popularized has all the tools, but I think it's slower than what we're doing. But which we've already discussed. But yeah, it's just a mill matchup. I don't think there's really any more nuance to it.
I mean, the biggest nuance to the deck is, unless they are running so many out of aspect cards like Bounty Hunter Crew and Sparks, and, I touched on this earlier, they're paying a lot more for those cards that we're not. So I'm able to utilize so much more in a turn. Like you're paying 8 for your bounty hunter crew. I'm paying 6. You're paying 6 for your Spark of Rebellion. I'm paying 4. Like that's a lot. So that's an extra 2 resources at the top end where you don't get to do that. You get your vigilance cheaper if you're like mono blue Iden, but it's like you have to stuff bounty hunter crews and Spark of Rebellions in your deck to even compete with what we're doing, and that's a problem.
I guess there's a lot of nuance in with the leader flip in that matchup. Oftentimes it's gonna sound real funny, but probably the most common leader flip is gonna be around resource turn 9, so you can do bounty hunter crew and vigilance off of a Boba flip. Like you're looking for that opportunity of like bounty hunter crew plus maybe a spark, whatever it might be. Like
so you're delaying your Boba flips sometimes till after the blast.
A blast is a little bit long. You delay it in control matchups until typically after take initiative, and there's some sort of trade you can make with it. In like soft control matchups, that's the most common use for it. It's not terribly often, at least in my experience, that I'm Superlaser blasting than flipping Boba like you would in Vader. The deck's not built to abuse that as much because there's not as many there's a lot of 3-cost plays that you would think that would line up are removable. You've already removed everything, so it's not quite as clean as the Avenger. The Superlaser blast.
Play some Boba Fett armor on him.
Yeah. There we go.
After you go,
nightmare fuel. That's after he attacked. I think delaying that to get one of your bounty hunter crew combos off, or even waylaying your own bounty hunter crew. That's a not commonly seen play, but like happens a lot in those matchups. You obviously want to go for the search of feelings restock stuff. Bottom line is you just want to get your opponent to the point where they have to restock, or if they restock, you immediately vigilance their restock away and you spark it out of their hand. Whatever sequence, you just do that.
Yeah, and then that forces them, if they're not running bounty hunter crew, there's nothing they can do. Or unless they have, multiple restocks.
Or get exceptionally lucky. I mean, I suppose sometimes it's possible they'll hit the perfect 6 cards of vigilance.
Yeah, better lucky than good.
Not very often.
I had a Blue Vader game during the 1K, and he milled all 3 of my vigilances and my restock in one vigilance, and I still milled him out before he milled me out.
It's funny, my wife brought my turret deck to the last week of Bounty League, and she actually milled an Avenger Vader successfully, which was hilarious. But because he resourced his restock, but
yeah, like you wouldn't think you're like, I need a restock against a Charute. Dude, that is.
It does have 3 vigilance. It's happened to me before. I milled a blue Iden that way too, just because I didn't have anything to heal, because I was just ahead the whole game, so I had to kill a thing. So I made a mill 6. I got like 2 Avengers and a vigilance out of the 6.
God.
I'm like, well, that's worth it.
Yeah, so. You're like best vigilance ever. I'll take that. To touch on what we talked about earlier, and I know George told me to bring it up, but the Pirated Starfighter. So like my initial thing with Pirated Starfighter was, as long as I had a bounty hunter crew and a Pirated Starfighter and like a vigilance or a restock like in my hand, it was basically I couldn't lose the game. And it works in like the same way a Waylay does, but it's also like just a solid drop. Like,
well, I think Pirated will see more play in set 2 as we have more strong
I think
one-played
it's
effects.
A card that will scale, and the fact that it's a 2-cost, essentially 3/4 in the air is powerful.
I like it in Inquisitor Yellow. I mean, I think it's a strong card there because that deck is relying so heavily on sneak attack and damaging your units. So it provides the nice deeded refresh, and then it can be inquised itself.
I agree. I think it utilized like initially why I had 3 of them too is like,
and you can bring it back with McClunky. which is
It's
broken good
never-
at times.
But like it works on all your units, like boss being able to like ambush, return at ambush, bounty hunter crew fire spray, Avengers. Like sometimes like if you want to be able to kill something, you don't have a hard removal, but you don't want your Avenger to die. So there was like
Even like
areas where-
Jabba. I mean, Jabba draws a trick, when he comes
Jabba,
down.
Yeah.
I mean, if you start beating up your Jabba, you can bring it back. I mean, I do like it in that deck. All right.
Yeah, I think it's stuff better.
So you guys are both
Counter bounty.
going to more store showdowns yet? Or you guys completed your circuit for set 1?
I have one more this Saturday coming up, so we'll see how that goes. I gotta get the third mace, man. Gotta have 3 champion maces. That's the set.
Yeah, there you got a play set of the champion ones. Any advice for somebody preparing for a showdown? How to get ready?
I always say know your general sideboards. Do your homework is what I said last time. So I take the floor. So.
Yeah, I mean, know your meta, like in your area. It's the big thing. Think about like how many people you predict are going to be there, and really find your list and play with it a lot. And if anything, take a couple extra cards, like before you go and before you write your list. If you're debating anything, sometimes you just make some last minute changes. Like my list was pretty much dead on the same as George's, and that morning I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I really want a Syndicate Lackey in deck. I really want a Vanquish in the deck, and I had those extra cards. I had like 8 extra cards sleeved, just in case I decided to make a change, and I did. So, and if you're weighing your options too, I like the whole philosophy is flip a coin, and if you don't like the outcome, then you know.
That's one way to do it. What about you? How do you prepare for a tournament, George?
So yeah, in general, practice. I think when you're looking at the meta, I think it's extremely important. I hear this a lot. Oh, what decks should I bring into this meta? And it's usually the question is like, I have some aggro and some mid-range and some control, right? And think about the players who are consistently topping your locals, the players who are consistently topping these events. What play styles do they prefer? What decks are they likely to bring? Like yes, if you take a large enough sample size, you're going to get some aggro, some mid-range, some control. And you look at their runs, they're going to have some aggro, some mid-range, some control. But think about when you're on round 5 for your winning in to the top 8, who are you likely to see? That's how you need to think about what does your local meta look like. And yeah, I think especially for control, I get this a lot. You need to respond to the meta. Control is fundamentally a reactive archetype. Vanquish being a perfect example. Like to me, I felt like I Am Your Father, Spark the Rebellion. Like those answered the big threats that I would want Vanquish for consistently enough that I didn't miss Vanquish. But if you're running a bunch of Palpatines, a bunch of other Avengers, a bunch of Relentlesses, then you need that Vanquish because I Am Your Father ain't doing it. They ain't scaring nobody. It's a 7 damage. You need that 8 damage, 10 damage, whatever it might be. So tailor your removal to what you think it is, and I think that's where I'm at.
I will. The last thing I'll kind of add on that too is go in and even if you have a tough match or if it's a person you played against that always performs very well, don't get in your own head because you'll face somebody that you face at locals and let's say they win every game and they're a good player. Try not to let that factor into your match at all. If you do lose, when I lost against Palpatine as my third match, it was I didn't let that get to a point where it affected me for the rest of the day. That's another big thing too. Sometimes you're gonna lose. You're just gonna lose. You can't. Sometimes you can win it all. Sometimes you can't. But you can't let that win dictate or that loss dictate the rest of your play. Because you will, if you're like, well, that sucked, and you get in that bad mindset, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna get more angry, you're gonna tilt easier. It only takes one thing, and then that'll cost you a tournament.
Yeah, and a lot of times the ones you end up winning the top cut are the ones where you had a couple losses in Swiss. I mean, I find that's true.
Yeah,
I mean, for sure. Whereas, you go undefeated Swiss, those people seem to, top 16 out.
Yeah, I've noticed the same too. Like sometimes it feels really good because you're like, all right, I'm in the top 8, I'm in the top 16, and you just like downhill from there.
Right,
like,
and then you meet Sabine like God draws, because that can happen to anybody. All right.
Yeah.
So why don't we end up with this? What is your hottest take for set 2? I'll call George first. Give me a set 2 hot take to close us.
So
and take
triple
us
dark raid. A triple dark raid, everyone sees it and thinks that's fire spray. Yeah, sure, you can do that. That's cool. Whatever. I think the consistency, not only of like vehicle decks, but specifically like the fact that it costs 3. I think playing a deck that can utilize that on turn 2 as removal is absurd. We're talking escort skiff. We're talking visual pursuit craft. Your opponent plays the best 2-drop in the game. A-wing, whatever. You triple dark raid, bring in your visual pursuit craft. They can't attack with it because you have a sentinel. You trade their A-wing, and then now you bring it back to your hand to them struggle later. Like, absurd card value. I'd say it's on par with Power of the Dark Side as far as early game removal. And then it has the late game implications of giving you an adventure on turn 7.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the card's incredible. Just don't look at it as like being the only use for big capital ships. Like Reinforcement Walker, that's a vehicle. Cargo Juggernaut, that's a vehicle. There's going to be like, you're playing this out, kill something, heal 4 damage, return it, you have another heal 4 in your hand. Like, there's going to be more uses for it.
Get a Dooku out with that. He'll probably kill 2 things.
He's not a vehicle, is he?
Oh no, he's not a vehicle.
No. But I mean,
maybe he is. Slap him on a drone or a clone or some kind of droid. You can run it in.
We're talking about Maul, where you just turn him into a cyborg. Yeah, it's cool. But
yeah, Maul might be part vehicle at this point in his life. I'm interested. I'm interested where Maul's going to land up. I mean, because we have both red leaders for villainy. He might be blue. The Hero Force users are blue.
I don't think he's smart enough to be blue, dude. I don't think he'll be blue. I'm thinking Cad Bane will be blue. I'm thinking Maul will be yellow. We'll see that.
Cad Bane's almost got to be yellow. Actually, I saw his ship today is yellow, so that tells us something.
Yeah.
And Cad Bane is and I'm a big Cad Bane stan. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, it's got action cheating like it did in Destiny.
All right, my
What's your hot take? Bring us home, Sin.
My hot take is going into when the meta starts shaping up and the control decks start getting built in set 2, these hard control decks, Heck will be a card that's in every hard control deck, either in the main board or in the sideboard. Heck will be in every single control deck.
Villain or hero? Even in the villain decks?
Both. Yeah. Both. I think it's both. I think the card is insane. The fact that it's smuggleable itself means all these lines that people practice, all this static gameplay that like right now you go against any deck. I go against Boba Green. You know the lines. You go against any deck, you know these lines. But you get to this late game where you're able to kind of think like, all right, it's Vigilance and Avengers and we're in these lines. And you have to start thinking about what smuggle cards or things like that. And you're like, well, does he have tech in his smuggle? Is he going to smuggle a tech and have access to an entire deck full of cards because you resource 12, 13, 14 cards?
Play half the cards from your discard pile nowadays, set 2 too.
Well, yeah, on top of that, I think tech...
somehow...
in the words of Palpatine, unlimited power. I think tech is insane and will be a card that is in every single control deck.
Yeah, tech on the rise. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Anybody who's watching this, if you watch this long, you're a hero. And hit a like, subscribe. Check out the rest of the master classes. All right. Loopy signing off.